The chamber floated in the darkness of space, a massive crystal structure that orbited a dying star. Inside, representatives from 47 different alien species sat in their designated sections. Some breathed oxygen, others methane. Some had scales, others had fur or skin that glowed with inner light. But today, they all shared one purpose. They were here to declare war on humanity. Admiral Ji-Ho Kong stood in the human embassy section, his uniform crisp and his posture relaxed. He had been expecting this day for months. The whispers in the halls, the closed-door meetings, the way other diplomats avoided eye contact with him. It was all leading to this moment. The Supreme Arbiter rose from the central platform. It was a tall creature, thin as a reed, with 4 arms and eyes that shifted colors. Its translator device hummed to life, converting its speech into sounds humans could understand. The Galactic Council has reached a decision regarding the human species, it announced. The chamber fell silent. After careful consideration of the evidence, we find humanity guilty of 17 violations of galactic law. Ji-Ho listened as the Arbiter read the list. Unauthorized research into faster-than-light travel. Expansion into 12 prohibited star systems. Refusal to share potentially dangerous technologies with the Council. Violation of protected space near the galactic core. The list went on and on. Dr. Hana Lee sat in the gallery above, watching the proceedings. She was Earth's chief scientist on the station, and she had seen this coming too. The Council feared what it didn't understand, and humanity had been very careful about what it let the Council understand. The penalty for these violations is severe, the Arbiter continued. Humanity will be stripped of all territorial claims beyond your home system. Your species will be placed under Council supervision, and if you resist, we are authorized to use military force to ensure compliance. The chamber erupted in sounds. Clicks, whistles, roars of approval from different species. They had finally put the upstart humans in their place. Ji-Ho stepped forward. Every eye in the chamber turned to him. He reached the central platform and accepted the formal declaration document. The Arbiter expected him to argue, to plead, to demand more time. That's what every other species did when faced with Council judgment. Instead, Ji-Ho smiled. It was a genuine smile, warm and almost friendly. He bowed slightly, a gesture of respect from his culture. "Thank you for your clarity," he said simply. "Earth will respond in due time." The Arbiter's eyes flickered through several colors rapidly. Confusion. The other delegates shifted in their seats. This wasn't the response they expected. Humans were supposed to be emotional, reactive. This calm acceptance unsettled them. Ji-Ho turned and walked out of the chamber. His footsteps echoed in the sudden silence. Hannah met him outside, and together they made their way back to the human section of the station. "They have no idea, do they?" Hannah asked quietly. "None at all," Ji-Ho replied. His smile was gone now, replaced by a more serious expression. "Contact Earth. Tell President Park that it's time." Back on Earth, in the command center buried deep beneath Seoul, President Doyan Park received the message. He sat at his desk, surrounded by screens showing data from every corner of human space. He had been waiting for this call. Doyan pressed a button on his console. The communication was encrypted, routed through channels that the Council didn't even know existed. On the other end, Commander Unichoi answered immediately. "Commander," Doyan said, his voice steady, "the Council has made their move. Remove the veil." "Understood, Mr. President," Yuna replied. "Beginning countdown now." Doyan ended the call and sat back in his chair. Around him, his advisors looked nervous. They knew what was coming. For 80 years, since first contact with the Council, humanity had been playing a very careful game. They had shown the aliens exactly what they wanted them to see: a young species barely capable of space travel. struggling to understand technologies that the Council had mastered millennia ago. But that was never the truth. It was a mask, a disguise, a way to buy time while humanity prepared for the inevitable. Because the humans had learned something in those 80 years, something the Council didn't want anyone to know. The galaxy was far more dangerous than anyone realized. On the Council station, the delegates were celebrating. The Velkarian ambassador, a massive creature covered in armored plates, stood with several other military-focused species. The humans will resist, of course, it said, its voice like grinding rocks. They always think they're special. We'll crush their little fleet in a matter of weeks. I almost feel sorry for them, added a Quillian diplomat, waving 2 of its 6 arms dismissively. They barely understand quantum mechanics. How can they possibly stand against the Grand Armada? But in the human section of the station, Jiho and Hana were preparing to leave. They packed up documents, encrypted files, personal belongings. Other human staff moved with quiet efficiency, following evacuation protocols they had rehearsed hundreds of times. Do you think they'll understand? Hana asked as she sealed her last container. When they see what we really are? Jiho paused at the window, looking out at the stars. Understanding comes with time. Right now, they'll just be afraid. But fear can be the beginning of respect, if handled correctly. A junior officer approached them. Admiral, Doctor, the last transport leaves in 30 minutes. We'll be ready, Jiho confirmed as they made their way to the docking bay. They passed other species delegations. Some stared at the humans with pity, others with contempt, a few with curiosity, none with fear. Not yet. The human transport ship departed from the station without incident. As it accelerated away, Hannah looked back at the massive crystalline structure. They gave us 3 months to comply before the fleet arrives. 3 months, Jiho repeated. More than enough time. He activated his personal communicator. All human personnel have evacuated the Council station. We're clear. On Earth, Doyun received the confirmation. He stood and walked to the large window overlooking the command center floor. Dozens of people worked at their stations, coordinating with colonies on Mars, Europa, Titan, and dozens of other human settlements throughout the solar system. Begin Phase 1 of Operation Lighthouse, he ordered. Let's show them who we really are. Across human space, things began to change. Ships that had been hiding in the dark powered up. Installations that looked like simple mining operations revealed additional purposes. And in the Kuiper Belt, far beyond Pluto, something massive began to wake up. The Council had declared war. They expected humanity to beg, to negotiate, to scramble for survival. Instead, humanity smiled. Because they knew something the Council didn't. Something that would change everything. The real war hadn't even started yet. The Grand Armada assembled at the edge of Council space. 10,000 warships, each one representing the military might of different civilizations. Some ships were organic, grown rather than built. Others were pure energy contained in magnetic fields. The largest vessels stretched for kilometers, bristling with weapons that could crack planets. Fleet Marshal Theron, a Velkarian commander with 2 centuries of military experience, stood on the bridge of the flagship Eternal Dominion. He had fought in 12 major wars and countless smaller conflicts. Never once had he lost a battle. The humans, he thought, would be no different from any other primitive species that got too ambitious. Status report, Theron commanded his tactical officer. A floating sphere of blue light responded immediately. All fleet elements have reached the staging area. 10,347 ships ready for jump to human space. Supplies sufficient for 3 years of sustained operations. 3 years, Theron repeated with amusement. We won't need 3 months. What's the latest intelligence on human military capability? Their fleet numbers approximately 1,500 ships, Marshal. Most are concentrated around their home system. They've begun evacuating their outer colonies and pulling back defensive forces. Standard retreat pattern for an inferior force. Theron nodded. It made sense. The humans knew they couldn't win a direct confrontation, so they were consolidating their defenses around Earth. It was logical, but ultimately futile. The Council's technology was simply too advanced. On Earth, Admiral Geo watched the same intelligence reports with a very different perspective. He stood in the Sol Command Center, deep underground, surrounded by holographic displays showing real-time data from across human space. "They think we're retreating," said General Sujin Kwan, the head of Earth's military forces. "The evacuation of the outer colonies looks convincing." "It should," Geo replied. "We've been practicing this maneuver for 40 years. Every ship movement, every communication, everything is designed to look like a desperate defense." Sujin gestured to one of the displays showing Mars. "The shipyards are working overtime. The Council's spy satellites must be recording everything." "Let them watch," Geo said with a slight smile. "They see us building defensive platforms, missile batteries, laser arrays. All very conventional, very predictable. Exactly what they expect from a species at our supposed level of technology. What the Council satellites didn't see were the real defenses. The platforms being built on Mars looked ordinary on the outside, but their internal components operated on principles the Council had never even theorized. Every conventional weapon had a secondary purpose that wouldn't activate until the right moment. On Mars itself, engineer Bora Kim supervised the construction of what appeared to be a standard orbital defense station. Workers moved back and forth, welding plates, installing systems, following construction plans that Council intelligence had probably stolen weeks ago. But inside the station, hidden behind normal-looking bulkheads, other workers installed very different equipment. Dimensional anchors, reality stabilizers, weapons that could fold space itself, all carefully shielded from any external sensors. "How much longer until we're ready?" Bora asked her assistant. "This station will be complete in 2 weeks, but it's already functional if we need it. The outer hull is just for show." Bora nodded. "Keep up the appearances. The more confident they are, the better this works." Meanwhile, Dr. Minho Song was giving an interview to a Quilian journalist on Earth's moon. The interview was broadcast across the galaxy, meant to show the Council that humans understood their situation. The journalist, with its 6 arms and multiple eyes, asked the obvious question. "Dr. Song, your species faces the combined military might of 47 civilizations. What makes you think Earth can survive this war?" Minho smiled calmly. "We're as prepared as we've ever been. Humanity has faced extinction events before. We're still here." "But surely you understand the technological gap," the journalist pressed. "The Council has been spacefaring for thousands of years. Humans have barely left your own solar system. Technology isn't everything," Minho replied. "Sometimes it's about understanding what tools you have and using them wisely." The journalist interpreted this as human delusion, a desperate hope of an outmatched species. Its report back to the Council reinforced their confidence. The humans were in denial about their situation. What the journalist didn't know was that Minho was one of the lead scientists on humanity's dimensional research project. He had spent 30 years studying the breakthrough that changed everything for humanity. Every word in his interview was carefully chosen to maintain the illusion. The Council fleet began its journey to human space. At maximum speed, it would take them 3 months to arrive. Theron used the time to drill his forces, running simulations of the battle to come. Every simulation ended the same way: total Council victory, minimal casualties. Humanity surrendering within weeks. As the fleet crossed into the outer regions of human territory, They detected something strange. A single human ship, small and unarmed, waited at the edge of the solar system near Neptune. It wasn't moving, wasn't threatening. It just sat there, broadcasting a message on repeat. Theron ordered the message translated. When he heard it, his confidence wavered for just a moment. "We tried to warn you. We're sorry." "What does that mean?" demanded one of his officers. "Psychological warfare," Theron decided. "They're trying to make us nervous. Ignore it and continue the advance." But the message bothered him. It wasn't threatening. It wasn't desperate. It was almost ... sad, like the humans genuinely regretted what was about to happen. But that didn't make sense. They were the ones about to be crushed. On the human ship, broadcasting the message, Lieutenant Taiyang Im sat at his station, monitoring the Council fleet's approach. He was alone on the vessel, volunteering for what everyone else thought was a suicide mission. But Taiyang knew better. "They're ignoring the warning," he reported back to Earth. "Expected," came Admiral Gio's reply. "Hold position until they pass Neptune. Then jump out." "Understood, sir." The Council fleet continued its advance. They passed the small human ship without incident. Sensors swept the area constantly, looking for hidden mines, cloaked ships, any kind of trap. They found nothing unusual. Just the ordinary emptiness of space, a few ice chunks, the distant glow of the sun. What their sensors couldn't detect were the dimensional markers. Thousands of them scattered throughout the outer solar system, invisible to conventional scanners. Each marker was a mathematical anchor point, a reference for systems that operated outside normal space. As the Council fleet crossed into the inner solar system, they began detecting the human defenses. Orbital platforms around every major planet and moon. Ships positioned in defensive formations. Everything you'd expect from a species preparing for a last stand. The Council forces spread out, surrounding the human positions at a distance. Theron studied the tactical displays. The humans had perhaps 2,000 ships now, calling in every vessel they had. Still vastly outnumbered. "They're actually going to fight," Theron's second-in-command observed. "I thought they might surrender when they saw our full strength." "Their pride won't let them," Theron replied. "But pride won't save them. Prepare for engagement. We'll give them one final chance to surrender. Then we begin the assault." On Earth, President Doyon Park watched the Council fleet take up positions. Everything was proceeding exactly as predicted. The Council saw what they expected to see, a desperate, outmatched humanity preparing to defend their home. "Commander Yuna," Doyon spoke into his secure channel. "Status?" From her hidden location, far beyond what the Council could detect, Yuna Choi responded. "All forces ready, Mr. President. Dimensional systems charging. We can drop the veil on your command." "Not yet," Doyon said. "Let them commit fully. Let them think they've already won." The Council issued their ultimatum. Surrender immediately, or face destruction. They gave humanity 24 hours to respond. The response came from Admiral Jiho himself, broadcast to every Council ship. "We refuse your ultimatum. Earth will not surrender. If you want our world, you'll have to take it." Theron smiled. Finally, the humans were showing their true nature. Defiant to the end, but ultimately doomed. He gave the order to attack. And that's when everything changed. The moment Theron gave the order to attack, reality itself seemed to shudder. His tactical displays flickered, showing impossible readings. Space was bending in ways that violated every known law of physics. His sensor officers called out in confusion as their instruments went haywire. "What's happening?" Theron demanded. "Unknown, Marshal. We're detecting massive spatial distortions throughout the entire solar system. It's like space is folding in on itself. On Earth, Admiral Jiho spoke two simple words. Drop it. Far beyond the solar system, in a pocket of reality that existed between dimensions, Commander Una Choi pressed her hand against a control panel. Around her, the bridge of humanity's true flagship hummed with power. The ship existed partially in normal space and partially somewhere else, invisible to conventional sensors, impossible to target with ordinary weapons. Veil deactivation in 3.2.1 mark. Across human space, the illusion vanished. What the Council thought they knew about humanity disappeared like smoke in the wind. And what they saw instead made every alien in the fleet question their understanding of reality. The asteroid belt wasn't just rocks floating in space. Every single asteroid was a weapons platform, each one bristling with systems that phased in and out of normal space. Thousands of them, all cloaked until this moment, all now revealed in their true form. Mars wasn't a single colony struggling to survive. The planet's crust opened like a flower, revealing level after level of construction, going deep into the planet's core. 3 billion people lived inside, in cities that existed in carefully folded dimensional space, making the planet far larger on the inside than outside physics should allow. Earth's moon flickered. For a moment, it seemed to disappear entirely, then reappeared in a slightly different position. It wasn't a moon at all, not really. It was a mobile command station that could shift between dimensions at will. Jupiter's famous red spot began to glow. Energy readings spiked off the scale as the massive storm revealed its true nature. A dimensional anchor point. A gateway to elsewhere, powering installations that the Council had never even imagined. And ships. So many ships. They appeared from nowhere, phasing into normal space from dimensions the Council didn't know existed. Not thousands of ships, millions, each one using technology that made the Council's proud armada look like children's toys. Theron stared at his displays in horror. This isn't possible. Where did they hide all of this? Our sensors would have detected. Our sensors were looking in the wrong place. His science officer interrupted, her voice shaking. Marshal, these ships, they exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously. They're here, but they're also somewhere else. Our sensors can't track them properly because they're not entirely in our reality. In Geneva, Dr. Hannah Lee began a broadcast to the entire Council fleet. Her image appeared on every alien ship, calm and professional. People of the Council, she began. What you're seeing now is the truth of humanity. 40 years ago, we discovered something near the edge of our solar system. A tear in reality, a doorway to other dimensions. While you've mastered travel through normal space, we learned to step outside of space entirely. She gestured, and images appeared beside her. Mathematical formulas, dimensional diagrams, proof of concepts that made the Council's top scientists gasp in recognition and disbelief. Every violation you accused us of was an attempt to share this knowledge. The prohibited systems you told us to avoid? We went there and found the ruins of 300 dead civilizations. Species that came before you, before us, before anyone currently alive in this galaxy. More images appeared. Ruins of alien cities. Dead worlds. Technology beyond even what humans had achieved. And everywhere, the same warning symbols, carved in stone and metal and crystal. The Council has been hiding the truth, Hannah continued. Those prohibited zones weren't sacred. They were graveyards. Quarantined failures that you didn't want anyone to investigate. But we did investigate, and we found out why those civilizations died. Scientist Yoonji Park took over the broadcast. She stood in a laboratory somewhere on Earth, surrounded by artifacts from the dead civilizations. The Council's expansion follows a pattern, Yoonji explained. You avoid certain regions of space. You respect boundaries that you claim are religious or cultural. But they're not. They're warnings. Warnings you don't even understand anymore, because the knowledge has been lost over thousands of years. She held up a crystalline object, covered in alien writing. This is from a civilization that died 50,000 years ago. We found it in one of your prohibited zones. It's a warning beacon. And it says the same thing we found on 300 other dead worlds. They're coming back. On the Council flagship, Theron tried to process what he was hearing. But his attention kept being pulled back to his tactical displays. The human fleet wasn't attacking. They were just surrounding his forces, demonstrating their capability without firing a single shot. One of his ships tried to fire its weapons. The energy beam launched, traveling toward a human vessel at light speed. But the human ship simply flickered, existing in a slightly different dimension for a fraction of a second. The beam passed through empty space where the ship had been and hit nothing. Commander, Yuna appeared on the Council communication channels. She sat in her command chair, surrounded by displays showing every Council vessel perfectly targeted. "We don't want to fight you," she said simply. "We never did. But you need to understand what you're dealing with. We can phase our ships between dimensions at will. Your weapons can't touch us. Your shields can't stop our weapons. If we wanted to destroy your fleet, we could do it in minutes without losing a single ship." To prove her point, she gave a demonstration. A single human ship appeared directly in front of Theron's flagship, having bypassed all of his defensive perimeter. It sat there for exactly 3 seconds, close enough to touch, then vanished again. "We can be anywhere," Yuna continued. "We can strike from angles that don't exist in your physics. We can fold space to bypass any defense. But we're not doing that. Do you know why?" Admiral Jiho's face appeared alongside Yuna's. "Because we're not your enemies. We tried to tell you this peacefully. We tried to share what we learned. But you saw primitive apes playing with technology we couldn't possibly understand. You didn't listen to our warnings. You didn't investigate our claims. You decided we were a threat based on fear, not evidence." Lieutenant Tai Yang Im led a squadron of human ships on a demonstration that shook the Council to its core. His squadron split into 47 groups. Each group appeared simultaneously above the capital world of each Council species. They didn't attack. They didn't threaten. They simply projected a message in the local language. We can be anywhere. We choose mercy. The implications were clear. Humanity could have struck at the heart of every Council civilization simultaneously. They could have bypassed all defenses, all fleets, all military might. They chose not to. On the Council station where this had all started, the Supreme Arbiter watched the broadcasts with its color-shifting eyes flickering rapidly through the entire spectrum: fear, confusion, understanding, horror. They were never the primitives we thought they were. It said quietly to itself, "We declared war on a species that could have ended us at any moment." Back in the solar system, Theron's fleet sat paralyzed by indecision. They were surrounded by forces they couldn't fight, facing technology they barely understood. And the humans still hadn't fired a single aggressive shot. Dr. Minho Song appeared on the broadcast channels. The same scientist who had given that interview, the one where he'd seemed so calm about humanity's chances. "I told your journalist we were as prepared as we've ever been," Minho said with a gentle smile. "I wasn't lying. We've been preparing for 80 years. Not to conquer you, not to dominate the galaxy, but to protect it from what's really out there." The broadcasts ended with one final message from President Nguyen Park. He stood in the Seoul Command Center, looking directly at the Council delegates. "You wanted to know about our violations. You wanted to know why we refused to share our technology. You wanted to know why we expanded into prohibited space." He paused, letting the weight of his next words sink in. "We were trying to save you. All of you. Because we found something in those dead systems. Something the Council either doesn't know about or has been hiding. And that something is coming back." The Supreme Arbiter finally spoke, its voice transmitted across all channels. "We ... request terms of surrender." Doyan shook his head. "We don't want your surrender. We never did. We wanted conversation, partnership. You gave us war instead, so now we'll give you something better. We'll give you the truth. The real truth about what's coming for all of us." The Council fleet held position, no longer an invasion force, but an audience. And humanity prepared to reveal the real threat that had driven all of their actions. For 40 years, the galaxy was about to learn that the war between humans and the Council was never the real war at all. Admiral Jiho stood before the holographic display, showing every Council ship in the solar system. They hadn't moved in 3 hours. The entire armada sat frozen, waiting for humanity's next move. But Jiho wasn't interested in military victory. He never had been. "Open a channel to all Council vessels," he ordered. It's time they understood everything. The communication went live. Jiho's image appeared on every ship in the Council fleet. Behind him, holographic displays showed data that humanity had been collecting for 4 decades. "I'm offering you a choice," Jiho said clearly. "Stand down your weapons. Accept our offer to negotiate. Learn what we've discovered and help us prepare. Or continue this pointless conflict and doom us all." On the Eternal Dominion, Theron listened carefully. Part of him still wanted to fight. His pride as a military commander demanded it. But he wasn't stupid. The tactical situation was impossible. His fleet was surrounded by forces that could strike from dimensions he couldn't even see. What guarantee do we have? Theron asked. "How do we know this isn't a trick?" "You don't," Jiho replied honestly. "You'll have to trust us. The same way we've been trying to get you to trust us for 40 years. Before Theron could respond, one of his subordinate commanders made a decision. Commander Vecker of the Valkyrian Fourth Fleet, commanding 200 ships on the outer edge of the formation, had always been more aggressive than his superiors. "I will not surrender to primitives." Vecker roared across the open channel. "Attack formation. Target the nearest human vessels." His 200 ships broke formation, weapons charging, shields maximizing. They accelerated toward a cluster of human ships, determined to prove that the Council's might was not to be dismissed. Commander Yuna Choi watched the Valkyrian ships approach her position. She didn't panic. She didn't rush. She simply gave a single order to her tactical team. "Displacement protocol. Non-lethal. Show them." The Valkyrian ships fired. Energy weapons, missiles, kinetic rounds, everything in their arsenal. The barrage would have been enough to destroy a planet. But the human ships didn't dodge. They didn't raise shields. They simply existed in a slightly different phase of reality for a fraction of a second. Every weapon passed through empty space. Not a single hit connected. Then the human response began. But it wasn't an attack. It was a demonstration that the Valkyrian ships suddenly found their weapon systems offline. Not damaged. Not destroyed. Simply displaced. Every weapon emitter, every missile tube, every gun was shifted exactly 3 millimeters into a parallel dimension, close enough to see on their sensors. Impossible to access or use. Vecker stared at his tactical display in horror. What did they do? How did they... His engineering chief's voice came over the internal comm. "Commander, our weapons are still there. I can see them on the internal scanners. But there, somewhere else, overlapping our space, but not in it. I don't even know how to explain this." Then the human ships did something even more disturbing. They phased the Valkyrian reactor cores. Not completely out of reality, just enough to make them visible on sensors, but unreachable by any physical means. The reactors continued functioning, but if anyone tried to access them for maintenance or emergency shutdown, their hands would pass right through the control panels. Your ships are now unable to fight. Yuna's voice came through on Vecker's bridge, but they're also unable to repair or maintain critical systems. In about 6 hours, various components will start failing. In 12 hours, life support will become unreliable. We can reverse this displacement at any time, or we can let physics take its course. She paused, letting that sink in. This is mercy, Commander Vecker. If we wanted you dead, you'd already be gone. Stand down. Vecker, faced with the slow death of his entire fleet, had no choice. We stand down. Yuna gave another order. The displaced components snapped back into normal reality. Every Valkyrian ship was suddenly fully functional again, as if nothing had happened. The message was clear. Humanity could disable the Council's forces at will and choose to restore them just as easily. On the Council flagship, Theron made his decision. All ships stand down. Lower weapons. Accept human terms for negotiation. The Supreme Arbiter's image appeared on the command channel. Fleet Marshal Theron is correct. All Council forces will cease hostile actions immediately. Humanity, we are ready to listen. Dr. Hannah Lee took over the presentation. She stood in a conference room in Geneva, surrounded by holographic displays showing decades of research. 40 years ago, we detected an anomaly near Pluto, a dimensional rift. We sent a probe through, and it came back with data that changed everything we knew about the universe. The displays showed images of the rift, the probe's readings, the mathematical formulas that described what they'd found. We discovered that our reality is just one layer in a stack of parallel dimensions. Some of these dimensions are empty. Some contain energy patterns we don't understand. And some contain things that are aware of us. Scientist Yunji Park joined the presentation, adding her expertise. Once we understood dimensional theory, we began searching for evidence that others had discovered it too. That's when we found the prohibited zones that the Council had marked as off-limits. Holographic images appeared showing dead planets, ruined cities, technology that had been torn apart by forces that left strange marks on the metal and stone. 300 civilizations spread across this galaxy, Yunji continued. All dead, all killed by the same method. Something came through dimensional rifts and destroyed them. Completely. No survivors. No refugees. Just ruins and warnings. Dr. Minho Song added his analysis. We studied the patterns, the timing, the methods. These weren't random attacks. They were organized, systematic, like a harvest. The word sent chills through every council member listening. The entities that did this exist primarily in dimensional space, Minho explained. They're partially in our reality and partially outside it. They move through dimensions the way we move through normal space. And they feed on advanced civilizations at their peak development. Engineer Bora Kim demonstrated the technology humanity had developed in response. Everything we've built for the past 40 years has been designed to fight beings that exist between dimensions. Our ships can phase between realities because that's where the enemy operates. Our weapons can strike targets that don't fully exist in our space. Our cities are hidden in dimensional folds because that's the only way to protect them. Lieutenant Tai Yan Yim showed combat simulations. We've been preparing for a war against an enemy that can appear anywhere, attack from angles that don't exist, and disappear before conventional weapons can target them. That's why we developed phasing technology. That's why we learned to fold space. Not to conquer you, but to have a chance against them. Admiral Jiho brought the presentation back to the current situation. The Council's expansion over the past 10,000 years has been following a pattern. You avoid certain regions. You respect certain boundaries. We analyzed those patterns and realized something terrifying. A galactic map appeared, showing Council territory, the prohibited zones, and the territories of the 300 dead civilizations. You've been unconsciously avoiding the harvest zones, Geo said. Your instincts, your culture, your religion, all of it has been shaped by ancient survivors who knew the danger but couldn't explain it. The prohibited zones are the places where the harvesters have been most active. President Doyen Park delivered the final, terrible conclusion. We found evidence in the ruins, mathematical calculations, temporal markers. The harvesters follow a cycle. They return to this galaxy every 50,000 years. They clear out any civilization that's reached a certain level of technological development. Then they leave and come back again later. He paused, letting the weight of his next words hang in the air. The last harvest was 49,800 years ago. They're coming back, and we have less than 10 years to prepare. The channel fell silent. Every being in the Council fleet processed the implications. Their war with humanity was meaningless, pointless, a distraction from the real threat. Supreme Arbiter finally spoke. Why didn't you tell us this at first contact? Why hide it for 80 years? Chiho's expression was sad but understanding. We tried. In the first year after contact, we sent you 17 formal reports about dimensional rifts, 32 warnings about the dead civilizations, 41 requests to investigate the prohibited zones together. Do you know what response we received? He pulled up old communication records. The Council's replies were dismissive, condescending. Primitive species making wild claims, misinterpreting sensor data, seeking attention through false discoveries. You saw us as children playing with toys we didn't understand, Jiho continued. You wouldn't listen to our warnings. You wouldn't investigate our evidence. So we stopped asking for permission and started preparing on our own. Every violation you accused us of was us trying to save lives, trying to understand the threat, trying to build defenses before it's too late. Theron felt something he rarely experienced, shame. We were fools. We saw you as inferior and ignored everything you tried to tell us. Yes, Gio agreed simply. But we can't change the past. We can only prepare for the future. So I'll ask again, will you stand down and work with us? Or will you continue this war and face the harvesters divided? The answer came not from Theron, but from the Supreme Arbiter itself. We will stand down. We will listen. We will learn. And we will prepare together. Across the galaxy, the news spread. The Council's war with humanity was over before it truly began. Not because humanity surrendered, but because both sides realized they faced something far worse than each other. The Council station that had once declared war on humanity now served a very different purpose. Representatives from all 47 species gathered again in the crystal chamber, but this time humans sat among them as equals. The atmosphere had changed completely. Fear had replaced confidence. Urgency had replaced arrogance. Dr. Hanalei stood at the central platform, surrounded by holographic displays showing data that made even the most advanced Council scientists uncomfortable. She had spent the past week explaining dimensional theory to species that thought they understood physics. Most of them were still struggling with the basic concepts. This is a recording from the probe we sent through the dimensional rift 40 years ago, Hana explained. She activated the playback. The image showed a space that hurt to look at. Geometry that couldn't exist. Colors that weren't part of the normal spectrum. And moving through that impossible space were things, entities. They had no fixed shape, existing in states of constant change. Some appeared almost liquid. Others seemed made of light and shadow simultaneously. All of them radiated awareness. "These are the harvesters," Hana said quietly. "Or at least, that's what we call them. We don't know what they call themselves. We don't know if they communicate in any way we'd recognize. But we know what they do." Engineer Bora Kim took over, displaying the deep space monitoring network that humanity had built in secret. "We placed dimensional sensors in every prohibited zone. We've been watching the rifts for decades, measuring the energy patterns, tracking the fluctuations." The displays showed graphs and charts that all pointed to the same conclusion. The rifts were becoming more active. Energy readings were increasing. The barriers between dimensions were weakening. "The harvesters are coming back," Bora stated flatly. "Not today, not tomorrow, but soon. We estimate somewhere between 8 and 10 years before they breach into our reality in force." Scientist Yoonji Park presented the archaeological evidence. Holographic models of the 300 dead civilizations rotated slowly, showing the patterns of destruction. Every civilization they harvested was at roughly the same level of development, Yoonji explained. Advanced enough to be interesting, not advanced enough to defend themselves. They all had faster-than-light travel. They all had quantum computing. They all had basic understanding of dimensional theory. She paused, highlighting the Council's current technology level on the display. "You're right at the edge of that threshold. Another 1,000 years of development, and you would have discovered dimensional rifts naturally. The harvesters would have noticed, and you would have died like all the others." The council delegates shifted uncomfortably. The Valkyrian ambassador spoke up. "But humanity discovered dimensional technology. Why weren't you harvested?" Dr. Minho Song answered that question. "Luck, pure luck. We found the rift early in our space age. We weren't advanced enough to be interesting to them yet, and we found it during their dormant period, when they're somewhere else in the dimensional stack. We had time to study them without them noticing us." He brought up research data that showed humanity's rapid advancement. "Once we understood the threat, we focused everything on dimensional technology. Not for exploration, not for profit, for survival. Every resource, every brilliant mind, every research facility was dedicated to one goal: learning how to fight enemies that exist between dimensions." Admiral Jiho presented the military analysis. "The harvesters have advantages we can barely comprehend. They can appear anywhere. They can strike from multiple dimensions simultaneously. They can bypass any defense that exists purely in normal space." He showed simulations of harvester attacks based on evidence from the dead civilizations. Cities torn apart, ships destroyed without their shields ever registering an impact. Entire planets rendered lifeless in hours. "But they have a weakness," Geo continued. "We found it carved in the ruins, written in 100 different languages by 100 different species, all saying the same thing." The holographic display showed ancient text, translated into every council language simultaneously. They cannot harvest what exists in multiple states. Commander Yuna Choi explained the implication. The harvesters target things that exist fully in normal reality. Solid objects, fixed positions, stable dimensional signatures. But things that phase between dimensions, that exist in multiple states simultaneously, they can't process them properly. She demonstrated with a simulation. A harvester entity tried to attack a standard ship. The ship's shields failed, the hull breached, the crew died. Then the same scenario with a phasing ship. The harvester's attack passed through empty space as the ship flickered between dimensions. The harvester couldn't adapt fast enough to track something that kept changing its dimensional state. "That's why we built everything to phase," Yuna said. "Our ships, our cities, our defensive platforms. Everything humanity has created in the past 40 years exists in multiple dimensions at once. We're learning to be like them, to exist the way they exist, because it's the only defense that works. President Doyon Park addressed the assembly with the hard truth. Humanity alone cannot stop the harvesters. We have the technology, but we don't have the numbers. We don't have the resources. We don't have enough time to build what we need to defend the entire galaxy. He gestured to the council representatives. But together, we might have a chance. You have resources we can't match. You have populations in the trillions. You have manufacturing capacity that spans thousands of worlds. If we share our dimensional technology with you, if we work together, we can build defenses strong enough to protect everyone. The Supreme Arbiter's eyes shifted through colors that indicated deep thought. You would share this technology freely? Even after we declared war on you? Yes, Doyon replied simply. Because we need you to survive. If the harvesters win, they'll kill everyone. Humans, council species, everyone. This isn't about politics or pride. It's about survival. Lieutenant Tai Yang-im presented the integration plan. We've already designed adaptation protocols for 47 different species. Your ships can be retrofitted with dimensional drives. Your cities can be phased into protective folds. Your populations can be taught to live in multiple dimensions simultaneously. He showed timelines and resource requirements. It won't be easy. Dimensional technology requires completely new manufacturing processes, new materials, new mathematical frameworks. Some of your species will struggle more than others. But it's possible. We can teach you. The Quillian ambassador raised 2 of its 6 arms. How long will this take? How long until we can defend ourselves? 8 years if we start now and commit everything to it, Tai Yang answered. Maybe less if we get lucky. Maybe more if we encounter unexpected problems. We're racing against the harvester's return, and we don't know the exact timing. Over the next month, the transformation began. Council ships jumped to human space, not as invaders, but as students. Human engineers traveled to alien worlds to help set up dimensional research facilities. Scientists from dozens of species worked together, sharing knowledge that should have been shared decades ago. Engineer Ora Kim found herself on a Valkyrian forge world, teaching workers twice her size how to manufacture dimensional anchors. The work was hard, the communication difficult, but they made progress. Your metallurgy is actually better than ours in some ways, Ora told the Valkyrian chief engineer. Once we combine your techniques with dimensional theory, we'll create alloys stronger than anything either of us could make alone. Dr. Minho Song established joint research stations in the prohibited zones. Teams of scientists from multiple species studied the dead civilizations together, gathering every scrap of knowledge about the harvesters. Look at this, a young Quillian researcher called out. She had found an intact data archive in a city that had been dead for 30,000 years. It's a recording from right before they died. The recording showed beings similar to Quillians, but not quite the same. They looked into the camera with expressions of terror. They're coming through the rifts everywhere, the ancient alien said. Our weapons don't touch them. Our shields don't stop them. They're in the streets, in the buildings, in the air itself. Tell whoever finds this, don't let yourselves be seen. Don't let them know you're there. Hide in the spaces between spaces. It's the only way to... The recording cut off. The researcher who had spoken was gone, ripped away by something the camera couldn't properly capture. The research team sat in silence for a long moment. Then Minho spoke quietly. Copy everything. Every recording, every warning, every piece of data. Someone died to leave this message. We honor them by learning from it. Admiral Jiho and Fleet Marshal Theron worked together to coordinate defensive positions. The old enemies had become allies, planning for a war neither of them wanted. Your tactical instincts are good, Geo admitted. You've fought more battles than I have. We need that experience. And you understand the enemy better than I do? Theron replied. This is not a war one ever expected to fight. Enemies that exist between dimensions, that attack from everywhere and nowhere. It goes against everything I was trained for. Then we'll retrain together, Geo said. You teach us conventional tactics. We teach you dimensional warfare. Neither of us knows everything we need to know. Commander Una Choi oversaw the first joint military exercises. Council ships practiced phasing in and out of normal space, learning to exist in multiple dimensions. It was clumsy at first. Ships appeared in the wrong locations, phased too far, and got lost, struggled with the mathematics of dimensional navigation, but they learned. Slowly, painfully, they learned. Scientist Yoonji Park made a breakthrough in understanding harvester biology. They're not entirely physical beings, she explained to a gathering of scientists. They're partially information, partially energy, partially something we don't have words for. They exist as patterns in dimensional space. Can we disrupt those patterns? Asked a Valkyrian scientist. Maybe, Yoonji replied. If we can generate the right frequency of dimensional vibration, we might be able to destabilize them. It would be like hitting them with a weapon that exists on their level. President Doyon Park stood with the Supreme Arbiter, watching the joint exercises through a viewing screen. Council and human ships moved together, practicing coordinated phasing, learning to fight as one force. Do you think we have a chance? The Arbiter asked. Doyon was quiet for a moment. I don't know. Honestly, I don't. The Harvesters have destroyed 300 civilizations. They've been doing this for millions of years. We're just one galaxy full of species they've probably forgotten about between harvests. Then why fight? Because what else can we do? Doyon replied. Surrender? Hide and hope they miss us? No. We fight because fighting is what gives us a chance. Maybe a small chance. Maybe no chance at all. But it's better than just waiting to die. The Arbiter's eyes shifted to a color Doyon had never seen before. Hope, perhaps? Or determination. My people have a saying, the Arbiter said. The universe does not care about fairness. So we make our own fairness through courage and wisdom. Humanity brought us wisdom. We will provide courage. Across the galaxy, preparations continued. Dimensional forges built weapons that could strike between realities. Cities phased into protective folds. Populations learned to live in multiple dimensions. The Council and humanity, former enemies, worked together toward a single goal. Survival. Admiral Geo stood with the Supreme Arbiter on a viewing platform above Earth, looking up at the stars. Somewhere out there, beyond normal space, the Harvesters were coming. 8 years. Maybe less. We declared war on you, the Arbiter said quietly. We called you dangerous. We threatened to destroy you. You did, Geo agreed. And you smiled. You smiled and then showed us why you were never afraid. You were preparing for something far worse than us. Geo nodded. We smiled because we knew you'd finally have to listen. Sometimes respect can't be asked for. It has to be demonstrated. You spoke in the language of war. We answered. And now we can speak in the language of cooperation. The Arbiter turned to face him. If we survive this, if we defeat the Harvesters, what happens then? Between our peoples? Jiho smiled again, the same warm smile he'd shown in the council chamber all those months ago. Then we'll have time to figure it out. Time to actually get to know each other. Time to build something better than fear and suspicion. But first, we have to earn that time. The United Fleet continued its exercises. Human and Council, working together, preparing for a war that would decide the fate of every living thing in the galaxy. The harvesters were coming. But this time, they wouldn't find helpless prey. This time, they would find a galaxy ready.